then And then I abandoned it and came back to it because I didn't know what to do with it, really. And since there are so many interesting things to do as a researcher, I also had some pauses from these interests, engaging in gender studies and all kinds of other things. So on the one hand, it's a lifelong interest, love even, and so forth, but it has been influenced by very many different impulses. And it wasn't until around 15 years ago or something like that, that all the different threads and paths started to, well, go to one place, so to speak. So that is when I then started again with thinking about these things that had been following me for quite a long time. And that is where I started to think in terms of these modalities and media and so forth, that then became my first publication that really attracted some attention. And that was, well, a bit more than a decade ago now.
Okay, thank you. Well, most of us, maybe all of us here, we got interested in not in intermediality, but in the beginning in the phenomena, and how to understand those intermediate phenomena. But do you think your perspective, or the way how you look at intermediality, or maybe how you understand intermediality, have changed since the beginning, since the first moment you think, whoa, this is intermediate, or this is intermediality?
I don't think it has changed profoundly, perhaps, but rather that I've discovered or worked out intellectual tools to, well, to describe it better, perhaps, because I often felt that I was stumbling in the dark, actually, and I couldn't really see a way to go beyond the good substantial research that had been done already several decades ago within the inter-art paradigm. But I think that nevertheless, yeah, I think that what was important in widening the view and more reaching, well, the ideas that I embrace now was, well, on the one hand, this turn to an intermediate approach that included other media types as well. So the whole paradigm shift, so to speak, when inter-art largely was transformed into mediality. So I remember I was part of a few conferences where this was discussed a lot by, among others, Klaus Kleber, who has been important for the research in Brazil. So this widening of the scope was important, because I guess I think that I got, at some point, I got a little bit frustrated about certain rather fixed patterns in the inter-art research, namely that, well, it was like 3 media types or angles came back all the time, like a text, image, sound, text, image, sound, so to speak. And it was always from where I stood then, it was literature and the arts, literature and cinema, literature and music, and so forth. And it turned me off a bit for a while, because since I had been interested in other areas since earlier, I didn't feel really satisfied with this, because even though it was intermediality, it was still only a little bit larger than the standard study of, let's say, literature or cinema or whatever. So when I started to think in those directions, it became more interesting for me myself, and also I was influenced by colleagues. For instance, my close colleague Jürgen Brun at the same department as me, who kept saying to me more than a decade ago that intermediality is everywhere. You know, we shouldn't think of intermedial phenomena as something specific, secluded. But intermediality is a phenomenon that we can find everywhere, depending on how we look at things and how we think and so forth. And in the writing of W.T.J. Mitchell, also those ideas were prominent and made me think in broader perspective, so to speak. So yes, in that way, my thinking and interest has changed, becoming broader and broader until it's so broad that I get a headache only about thinking about it sometimes.
Well, I would be surprised if your responsive answer was no. So yes, I like, actually I admire a lot the way how you link the intermediality to communication in this large sense. I like the way you do this, yes. And maybe could you please tell us a little about the ISIS Intermediate Society for the International Society for Intermediate Studies?
Yeah. There is some confusion regarding the existence of this society, and I've been around from the very beginning, actually. So for those who don't know it, something called the Nordic Society for Inter-Art Studies was founded. I think it must have been around 30 years ago, or almost 30 years ago, after a conference at Lund University. And that society flourished for some time, but then it started to decline. The initiatives disappeared and so forth. And I thought that was really a shame, so I stepped in there and I became the chair of that society at exactly the same time when we decided that it should be renamed to the Nordic Society for Intermediate Studies. And then that existed for several years, and we had conferences with intermediality and so forth in the Nordic countries. But after yet another couple of years, 5, 6 years or something like that, I don't remember exactly, we realized that it was an international society because we had international participants coming from large parts of the world, and as there was no other society in the world claiming to be international, we decided to, okay, let's upgrade us to the International Society for Intermediate Studies. So in a way, it has existed for almost 3 decades, and from another point of view, it has existed for a shorter time. And but it's beyond doubt that it was Agnes who arranged the first official international society for intermediate studies in Cluj-Napoca like a decade ago or something like that. So yeah, that's, and I saw Cláudia books. I don't know if she's with us.
Cláudia, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, she's here.
She is.
Cláudia, say hello.
Cláudia is responsible for arranging next year's. Hello.
Hi.
So in around 1 year, we will have a conference in Dublin.
Oh.
Yes.
When? Sorry. When?
In 1 year. So I think
1 year.
Very early September. The dates are almost settled. Something like 1st and 2nd and 3rd of September. It will be announced quite soon. So, and it will be a meeting, hopefully, where we will be there in real life.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you. I hope I will be there, Cláudia. This it's really a question, I think, and maybe a question about me. I don't know. Have you faced an obstacle studying intermediality? And I'm not talking about funding. I mean, an obstacle, a theoretical obstacle, or you know, difficult to understand something, or to because intermediality is something very interdisciplinary field. So, have you faced some difficult?
Yeah. Oh yes. You believe me. I think that the most difficult thing for me is that, well, one discovers sooner or later that the world is very big. You know?
Okay.
I think the more I have read, the more I have tried to understand, the more I have tried to communicate with people who do not share the same background, who do not come from art studies or literature or whatever. The more I have realized, I mean, of course I understood this earlier to a certain part, but I'm now really overwhelmed by the massive amount of research that exists that touches upon very many of the things that we are thinking about, and the concepts that I try to develop and so forth. So yes, sometimes I despair about the difficulty of achieving these cross-disciplinary understanding and so forth, because much more than what I realized only a few decades ago, it's very difficult to get under, well, to really reach each other if you are trained in, raised in different academic disciplines. And you don't have to go that far away. I mean, I try to study and understand things like cognitive science and so forth. And of course, that is different. There are many things there that might be of interest for us and that I try to embrace, but you don't have to go that far away. I mean, one paradox one might think perhaps is that you only take a comparatively small step to the side towards an area that is called media and communication studies. It's not that easy to talk to people from media and communication studies, because even though we share terminology and to some extent share similar interests and so forth, I mean, there are people in media and communication studies who work with semiotics and also with the arts and so forth, but nevertheless there are basic aims and traditions and conceptual things that stick to people from different areas, and it's not at all obvious how to proceed if one wants to be able to connect, because we have different ideas, different aims, and since there are so many publications out there, also so many communities, well, it's different. It's difficult. Right now I try to reach another area that is also, that is or should be or could be very close to intermediate studies, namely translation studies, which is a area, and it has, in the last decades, it has parts of translation studies have started to move into the direction of these transmedial phenomena that we are interested in. So it's intersemiotic translation, as the Jacobson term reads, intersemiotic translations and all kinds of changes, transformations among different media types. Some people in translation studies are really interested in that, but they have already started to develop their own ideas, their own concepts, terms, and so forth. And it's like this, intermediality and some sections of the transmedial studies. And even bridging this relatively small distance, it's not easy. I've struggled with it for many months now to write an article for a handbook in translation theory, where I try to, overbridge these differences. And let's see how it goes, but it's not easy. So the risk is that intermediality studies, we are growing all the time and so forth, but that's the paradox in perhaps intermediality studies might develop into a subject area that is one area of studies, rather than what many of us would hope, namely that it's like a way of thinking that can be dealt with from people from working within many areas and discipline, but perhaps we will be only one bubble among other bubbles. I don't know. It's difficult.
Okay. Well, when we look at Higgins' diagram of intermedia, made in the 90s, I don't remember, we can see how intermediality is like a mix of everything. Sometimes I feel like I have to study the brain in order to understand intermediality. Well, yesterday I asked a different question, and maybe a captious one, like a different and weird question to the panelists, and I will repeat this question to you and to Agnes. Do you have some synonym to the word intermediality?
In English?
In English, sorry.
Well, not really, I think that
A word or expression, maybe 2 words, 3.
Yeah, well, media interrelations.
Media interrelations.
And I mean, it's for me, it's basically the same thing. I know that there are some different, partly competing ideas about how to use all these terms, but for me, the term intermediality has more and more become like a term for the umbrella concept of all kinds of interrelations among media, and of course that can be expressed in various ways. So, but no, I mean, I think it's, for me, intermediality is fine. Media interrelations or relations among media, yeah, whatever.
Okay,
Agnes?
Well, I think I already proposed in-betweenness, maybe.
in between.
Yes.
Media
in between.
Media in between. I like this. Well, maybe our colleagues, do you have some question? We have only 5 minutes. Some question or comments? Let me see the chat. Well, Flavia Cesarino, hi Agnes, always following you, she said. And we have here like an invitation for the ISIS conference in Dublin in September 2022.
Yes.
Brunilda?
Well, I think we all have to thank Professor Elleström, Professor Petho, and Professor Petrova. Am I right with their names? For their enlightening experience with and research on intermediality, and for their sharing with us this experience and research. Diverse perspectives are always welcome to all of us who work with intermediality projects. And it has been yesterday and today, it has been a pleasure to listen to them all. Therefore, thank you for being with us, whether it is morning, afternoon, or evening. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Also, thank you. And you are invited to join us this afternoon and tomorrow in the morning, afternoon, the same. Because yeah, we will have many roundtables again. Miriam, Alex.
Just thank you. It was wonderful. Very nice listening to the three of you. Thank you very much.
And I'm just thinking about to create like a folder or file folder to share the presentations and links among us. I don't know if you permit, if you think this is a good idea, but I think it is. I will try. I will send emails to everyone to ask about that. So thank you, colleagues. Thank you very much for being here, for your time, and I hope we meet soon. And this afternoon we meet again online. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Bye, everyone.